Okay, real quick, a few things before we get to this one. I wrote an original, script for this video back at the beginning of June, but right when I was about to finish it, they announced the debate schedule, so I basically redid the whole script, and I was very busy last week, so I didn't get a chance to film this then. So I'm finally getting a chance to film it at the beginning of this week, before the debates. Hopefully it'll be up before the debates actually start, and then I'm going to do a follow-up video the weekend or probably the week after the first Democratic debates. So yeah, like I said, I planned on doing this at the beginning of the month. Stuff got in the way. Now I'm getting it done now, and it'll be in 2 parts. So this is my initial thoughts on every Democrat running for president in 2020. First and foremost, it's a donkey. So Democratic. Anyway, so we're going to once again do this video in parts, as I usually do. But I'm going to keep the introduction short on this one. This is my third political talk video. This one took 2 months compared to the last one, which only took 6 months to make. Like I said, I've been wanting to do this prior to the first Democratic primary debates. So this is just, like I said, my initial thoughts. I'm gonna give my initial thoughts on the 20 Democratic candidates who will be on the 2 nights. I'm gonna talk about debate night 1, the 10 on that night. Then debate night 2, talk about those 10 on that night. Not going to talk about the 4 who didn't make the first debate. If they're still around, maybe I'll give my thoughts on them in the future. But yeah, before I get into talking about the 20 candidates and just giving like a minute or 2 minute explanation or like my initial thoughts on all of them, first I want to give my own personal political ideology, history, backstory, whatever first. And yeah, like I said, I'm going to try and make this one go pretty quick just because I got 20 people to talk about. So let's just get into that. Okay, so before I talk about the 20 Democrats who will be on nights 1 and 2 of the first primary debates, I want to give a little backstory on my own personal political ideology and history. If you've read my comments on various progressive YouTube channels, you know that for the most part I am a Democrat, but I want to share in detail my political backstory, my history, as basically how I got to where I am. So I was born in Texas and grew up when George W. Bush was president of the United States. I think he became president when I was 5 or 6 years old. So being from the state that the president was from, basically I always thought the president as a little kid, like he was the most powerful person in the world. So I always support our president because, again, he's from our state. My mom has almost always been a Republican. And my dad is more independent, but he leans Democrat. So I never really had, growing up in my immediate family, strong one way or the other, because just kind of the way it worked out. When I was in middle school in 2008, and at the time George W. Bush was not popular, so I did not really want to support John McCain because our middle school basically, as I guess like a way to let the students have like their own mock vote, who would you support, John McCain or Obama? Since Bush wasn't popular, I didn't want to support McCain because he was from the same party, and Barack Obama being half black, half white, I'm half Latino, half white, so I thought, okay, I'll support the guy who's like me, biracial. And I didn't really think too much in terms of political ideology. I just knew that McCain is like Bush isn't popular, so I'll support Obama for those 2 reasons. And I was 17 in 2012, so I couldn't vote in that presidential election, though if I had been 18, I would have voted for Obama in 2012. Now, in 2016, I still did not really consider myself fully one way or the other Democrat or Republican. I knew I leaned Democrat, but I still considered myself an independent in 2016. And the first candidate I actually supported in 2016 after the first few primary debates was actually John Kasich. But by the time I supported Bernie Sanders on the Democratic side, I realized, one, the DNC was kind of screwing Bernie over, and second, even with that, I mean, I was not initially on the Bernie bandwagon. So I was initially, okay, I don't really support any of the Republicans now because I didn't like Trump, didn't like my Senator Ted Cruz, and the only one I did kind of like besides Kasich, Rubio, was not really getting much traction either. So in the end, I was like, okay, I'll support Clinton, and I ended up voting for Clinton in the end in 2016. Now, sure, Trump still won the Electoral College, not the popular vote, but hey, that's just how it worked out. And note to self, in the future, do a video on the Electoral College, why it needs to be changed, or even just got rid of. Anyway, so yeah, currently I consider myself more of a progressive Democratic voter, although there are a few issues I am more moderate or conservative on for the most part. but I would say like 3/4 progressive Democrat and maybe like 1/4 more conservative Democrat. So if I were ever run for office, I would run as a Democrat. But even with that, like I said, I've kind of been all over the place political ideology-wise, and that kind of influences a lot of my opinions for many of these Democrats running for office. So yeah, now I'm going to talk about debate night 1 and give like a quick minute or two about each Democrat on night 1. Then I'll do the same with night 2, and then just give like a short conclusion. Like I said, I want to keep getting to this very short because I got 20 people to talk about, so yeah, here we go. Okay, so first debate night. Now, as I said in the introduction, originally I had the script written in a different format, but I kind of reworked it a little bit. So before I talk about the first 10 candidates, I want to talk about how my original format was. Basically, I divided all the candidates into 3 categories, as I called them: the big 3, the middle 8, and the bottom half. The big 3 consisted of Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, and Bernie Sanders. The middle 8 consisted of Cory Booker, Tulsi Gabbard, Amy Klobuchar, Beto O'Rourke, Pete Buttigieg, Christian Gillibrand, Kamala Harris, and Andrew Yang. And then the bottom half was literally the other half of the candidates, the other like 12 or 13 who were also running. So I've revised it to match the debate night schedule. So the 10 on night 1 and the 10 on night 2. And I took out the 4 that aren't going to make the debates at all. So, but I'm still going to go in that order where I talk about the ones of the big 3 first, then the middle 8 next, and then any who are in the bottom half at the bottom. And I'll probably just have like a very like 1 or 2 sentences for them, go with more detail for the other 2 categories. So, okay, night 1. Elizabeth Warren first. She's the only one of the big 3 on debate night 1, which could be seen as both a good thing and bad thing for her. On the one hand, she's not debating Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, so she could be seen as someone to stand out and the person to beat. But on the other hand, because she's alone, a lot of the other candidates might target her because she's the only one of debate night 1 who's in the double digits. So currently she's my number 1 pick for president. While I still do like Bernie Sanders, and I'll get back to him when I can talk about debate night 2, currently I feel like I just like Warren a little bit more than Sanders. Although, admittedly, those 2, and maybe with 1 or 2 others, they're the only true progressives running right now. So if either of them get the nomination, that'd be awesome. But I'll get back to, like I said, more with Sanders later. But as for Warren, she's introduced a lot of great policies, and it seems like it's kind of a back and forth between her and Sanders on which policies are better. Now, yes, I'm aware that there are some issues with Warren's past. Even ignoring the whole Native American scandal, there are some progressives who question if she truly is progressive enough since she used to be more Republican. But I believe that, and yeah, there are some issues where she can be a bit, not necessarily war hawkish, but maybe more supportive of military action than, say, Bernie Sanders, and that can be seen as a weapon to use against her. But overall, like I said, she is my current number 1 pick. If she can do pretty well in the first few debates, I think she'll be able to stand out pretty well, because currently in almost every poll, she's behind Biden and Sanders. Very rarely is she in the middle, but I don't think she's ever been at the top. But I think if she does very well, like I said, on this first night by herself, against all these other 9 people, I think she'll have a pretty good chance of really standing out more than she already is. Okay, now the 4 from the middle 8 on night 1. Cory Booker. Cory Booker overall is a likable guy, but he has a bit of a split voting record on certain issues. Key example is when he often talks about wanting to help poor people afford medications and drugs, and every now and then talks about Medicare for all, but he's also voted against bringing in cheaper drugs from Canada and keeping pharmaceutical companies in check. So it will be interesting to see what he says versus his voting record how many people will take his voting record against him. Because that's the whole point of a primary. Saying it's looking at all of your entire voting record and everything you've said in the past and what you say now, which is something I'll get back when I get to Joe Biden for debate night 2. Only other thing to add, he's dating Rosario Dawson. That's kind of awesome. Not really much else to add, but just thought I should bring that up. No, I'll bring that up. Okay, next, Tulsi Gabbard. Very progressive. She's a veteran. She's called out, we need to stop the regime change wars. Now, I'm someone who has military veterans in my family. Both my biological grandfathers were Vietnam. One of my great-grandfathers was World War II. I have a cousin in the Army right now. So I do support the military. I myself, at one point, considered going in the military after high school, but I instead got a partial scholarship at TCU, so I went there, and I've just been working full-time, so I don't think I ever will go. But I have big props for anyone who does take the decision to go serve in our military, and I have great respect for them. But Tulsi has used her time in the military to realize that And it's changed her as a person, realizing we don't need to always be the interventionist, get in these never-ending wars. I mean, there are wars that have gone on basically almost as long as I've been alive. I mean, 9/11, I was 6 when that happened. We've basically been at war for like 3/4 of my life in the Middle East following 9/11. And Tulsi is very vocal about that. And while she's still fairly low in the polls, she's kind of been coming up slowly recently, so I think that'll be a good thing for her. If she can really make herself stand out on the debate stage, she could really pull up a bit more. I wish the mainstream would give her more coverage than she's already gotten, but when she does get mentioned on TV, she really manages to make herself stand out. The only thing, and this has been very recent, is that she's been kind of more defensive and, like, I guess, trying to help, I guess, defend the negative press around Joe Biden. That could be seen as a bad thing. But she's very progressive. She's been on the Young Turks a lot, and I'm going to mention them a few times because they're one of the main political shows I watch. So, yeah, I think she has a good chance of doing well in debates against some of these more older conservative Democrats. Speaking of which, next from the middle 8, we have Amy Klobuchar. Going to keep this one short. Not a big fan of her. She's not really had the strongest voting record. I'd say it's even worse than, say, someone like Cory Booker, which is more of like a split record. She's had rumors of anger issues and mistreatment of her staff. And from what little I've seen of her in debates in the past, I don't think she's the strongest debater. So I'd be surprised if she lasted very long. And then finally, from the middle 8 in debate night 1, we have Beto O'Rourke. Now, I voted for Beto for the Senate race, and I kind of wish he would have run for the Senate here in Texas again against John Cornyn. And who knows, maybe he's going to run for president for a while, try to get his message out there better than he did in 2016, and then drop out early on, and then try and run for the Senate again against Cornyn. I hope that's his strategy, but even if that is, it's still a weak strategy. Now, he has talked a bit about environment as a key issue, but I feel like he's kind of lost some steam recently after he basically came in kind of late announcing his run for president. And it seemed like he seemed to campaign very progressive for the Senate, but he seems to be campaigning less progressive for president. So that could be seen as something to be used against him. And like I said, while he's a Texan, and I really want to support both him and Castro, who I'll get to in a minute, because I'd like to see really strong Democrats represent Texas, I don't think Beto... he really should just run for the Senate again. He should not have tried running for president, especially with a field this big. And I feel like whatever bandwagon there was in the mainstream covering him has kind of moved on. So it will be interesting to see how well he does in the debates. Now, I watched his debates against Ted Cruz. He did fairly well, but that was him against Ted Cruz. My worry is that I don't think he can stand out with so many Democrats running, so it will be interesting to see how that works out. Okay, now the bottom half from night 1. I'll go through all these guys quickly. Julian Castro. He was Barack Obama's second HUD secretary, or was he his third HUD secretary? Well, he was the HUD secretary in his second term, I know that. He's talked a lot about infrastructure and universal pre-K, which I think are important issues. Personally, I wish he got a little more coverage, but he's a bit more establishment Democrat, because like I said, he was Obama's HUD secretary. So I don't think he's going to get the nomination. I don't think from what I've seen of him in debates, he's not the strongest debater. He's not a weak debater, but he's not the strongest debater either. I think his brother Joaquin's a slightly stronger debater from what I've seen of him in debates. But the thing with Julian, if someone like Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders became the nominee, I think he'd be the perfect VP pick. Because Warren and Sanders are both like New England, upper like Northeast Democrats, but Castro is from the South. He's Latino, and like I said, he's a bit more establishment. And while Warren Sanders is a bit older, he's more, I guess, middle age. Like I think he's like early 40s, mid 40s. So I think he'd be the perfect balance for the presidential ticket with someone like Warren or Sanders. So if one of them got the nomination, I think he'd be a good counterbalance for the VP position. Plus, it'd be cool to see Mike Pence debate against someone who could speak Spanish again. I didn't forget you, Tim Kaine. But Bernie should have been Clinton's VP in 2016, so that way she probably would have won. That's all I'm going to say about that. Okay, Bill de Blasio, New York City mayor. I don't really know much about the guy. He's somewhat progressive, but he also, on some issues, is kind of conservative, so he might be a bit wishy-washy in the debates. He came in late into the race, so I'm surprised he made it, but I honestly don't think he's going to last long. So, not much to say. John Delaney, a more conservative Democrat. I don't know much about him. What little I do know, I don't like him. I don't think he's going to last long. Jay Inslee. He's the governor of, I believe it was Washington. He's somewhat progressive, at least compared to a lot of Democratic governors. He's made environment a key issue, but I don't know. I feel like if there were like maybe half as many Democrats, he might get more coverage, but he hasn't gotten that much. So what little I do know about the guy, it'll really all ride down to how well he does in the first debate. If he doesn't do that well, he's probably not going to last long. Finally, we got Tim Ryan. He's a more middle ground congressman. He's been on TYT, the Young Turks, before. He's progressive, not really on that many issues, but he does talk at least some progressive, talk about some progressive policies, but I don't think he really is that sincere about it. So I could see him being more a future Speaker of the House because he's from Ohio, a more swing state. But if he does decent in debates, he might get some more press coverage, but I don't think he's going to last very long, to be honest. I'd be amazed if he lasts till Christmas. So, yeah, that's my overall opinion on night 1, so now I'm going to go to night 2. Okay, debate night 2. So from the big 3, we have 2. We have Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. So similar to what I said back with debate night 1, because it's these two up against each other, it'll probably be what the mainstream media is going to focus on a lot, Biden versus Sanders. A lot of the television media is going to focus a lot on Biden. A lot of the online media is going to focus a lot on Sanders. So it will be interesting to see. Now, here's the thing. Starting with Joe Biden, I do like the guy as a person, and he is currently the front runner, but he's quickly falling behind. He's already ran for president twice before, once in 1988 and once in 2008, and lost both times fairly early. Like, he dropped early both times. He's very establishment and very conservative Democrat. And like I said, I like the guy as a person. He has a great life story. But policy-wise, I think his time is done. Even if he wasn't as, I guess, protective of the status quo, I think it's just... Well, and I'm not trying to sound too prejudiced with age, but I'll say this again with Biden and Sanders, and I said a little bit with Warren. Age, I think, is going to be a main thing that'll hurt the three of them, since they're all fairly older. And I think with Biden, because he's had his chance a few times and he blew it, and I think he's currently blowing it right now, I'd be surprised if he lasts till Christmas. Like, I honestly like the guy as a person, but in debates, he's not the strongest debater. He's good one-on-one, like with Sarah Palin and Paul Ryan. He did great in those vice presidential debates, but against 10 of the Democrats, he's not going to last very long. So as much as I like the guy as a person, his time is done. He's not going to get the nomination. I'd be amazed, unless the DNC really screws over everybody else in favor of Biden, it'd be near impossible. I honestly think unless they screw over every other Democrat that much, that where it's no matter what we do, he's still going to get the nomination, I'd be amazed if he actually got it, but I honestly don't think he will. Bernie Sanders. Like I said back at the beginning of this video, I was not initially a big supporter of Sanders, but I am a huge supporter of him now. Because like I said, back in 2016, I was more of an independent voter. Now I'm more of a progressive Democratic voter. But I am still worried about the age. And while he has probably the strongest voting record, and he is a great debater, it will be interesting to see, I guess, how fair versus unfair the mainstream media is going to cover the guy. No question, a lot of the online media, progressive YouTubers are going to put a lot of praise for Sanders because he is one of the most popular politicians, and not the most popular politician in the country. And he's got, like I said, one of the strongest voting records. But it will be interesting to see if enough people are motivated to vote for him again, or if someone thinks, or if they think Sanders got screwed over before, let's vote somebody else, or Sanders, he's very old, and I don't think we need like a younger Democratic progressive. Like if we can get a young Bernie Sanders as president, no question that person's going to win if they go up against Trump. Could Bernie Sanders win? Currently the polls say he can, but again, it will also kind of determine who is his VP pick and how well he does in debates. But the main thing is if the media and the DNC are working to screw him over, it'll be hard, but it won't be impossible. But like I said, he's currently my number 2 right behind Warren. Okay, so now debate night 2's from the middle 8. We got Pete Buttigieg, youngest candidate. He's very popular, but there have been a few issues that have come up regarding race issues with his time as the mayor in Indiana. mainly how there have been some scandals and corruption involving the police force in his hometown, and some of it he covered up, some of it he was just complicit in cover-ups involving police force, including firing up one police chief who was African American and hiring on a Caucasian police chief who helped cover up some racist issues involving the police in his town. So if he can at least be decent enough in the debates, I don't think people will forget those scandals, but it will be a hard thing to overcome if enough Democrats on debate night 2 hammer that in. He couldn't even take care of the police issues in his town. How are we going to handle race issues or policing issues across the country? So that will be something that Pete has to answer for if he gets the chance. And similar with Beto, the mainstream media for a long time was kind of supporting him, but now some of the mainstream mainstream coverage is kind of pulling back. So yeah, if he doesn't do well in the first couple debates, I feel like he might drop pretty early. Kirsten Gillibrand. She actually announced fairly early, but I actually forgot she was running. It wasn't until they announced the debate nights, oh yeah, that's right, she's running. Because when I wrote my original script, I had all 24 candidates written down, but some of them I actually kind of forgot, names to the face. And then when they announced the debates, I was like, oh, okay, that's who Kirsten Gillibrand was. So she has somewhat a mixed voting record. What I find funny is she announced she was running on Stephen Colbert's show, and yet she has yet to appear in Our Cartoon President. We've had about almost a dozen Democrats either running or, right now, who have appeared on Our Cartoon President. She hasn't yet. What the heck, Colbert? She announced on your show. You held her hand. She looked you in the eyes and said, I'm running for president. Why aren't you putting her on your show? Is she really that boring a Democrat? But in all seriousness, yeah, what little I do know about Kirsten Gillibrand, or as some people call her, Kristen Jellobrand. Shout out to Kyle Klinsky. I don't know if she can at least do well enough in the debates. I think she might be able to last for a while, but policy-wise, she doesn't really seem to have too many policies, at least specific policies that, really, I think that's why she hasn't really gotten that much coverage, is she hasn't really had too many specific policies. The only other thing worth mentioning is she was one of the voices who spoke out at getting Al Franken out of the Senate once his whole scandal came forward. Whether you agree with it or not, I feel someone's going to bring that up at the debates against her, so it will be interesting to see how she responds to that. But yeah, for the most part, not really much I can say about her that is truly positive. Just kind of, she's there, so it'll be interesting to see how she does the first debate night. Kamala Harris. If I had to pick a third choice for president right now, she's it. Just barely above Tulsi Gabbard, who's fourth, but that's basically where I have it. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's it. So I don't really have anyone else anywhere specific. She has a mixed record as a prosecutor in California, but similar with Castro, I think she could also be a strong VP pick. Again, trying to balance the ticket. She could be a very strong debater against Mike Pence. I think she has, like I said, while she's only been a senator, I believe, for one term, for what she has done, I think she's been good in the Senate. But like I said, the main thing they'll probably be used against her is her time as the prosecutor and attorney general in California, particularly some issues regarding prisoners and how a lot of them would fight as volunteer firefighters, but then they don't get any pay for that. And there have been some issues with certain cases in the past, so that could be used against her. But if she, again, I think is one of the stronger, at least members of the Senate, who's going into these debates in these primaries in terms of debate skills, from what I've seen of her debating in the past. So I think she'll stay around for a while. I just wonder how long the mainstream media is going to be kind of focusing on her, because it's they kind of do and then kind of don't focus on Kamala Harris. So it will be interesting to see how this all works out with her. And then finally, the last of the middle 8, we have Andrew Yang. Very progressive. I've seen him on David Pakman and the Young Turks. He has strangely supported various white supremacist groups, but he's also talked about an issue which I personally am split on, but he makes sound pretty interesting, and that is a universal basic income for all Americans. And he does have a few other interesting issues, but I do worry he may, mainly just because it's similar with Tulsi Gabbard, he's not gotten that much mainstream coverage. I feel that if he doesn't do well in the debates early on, the mainstream media is going to just tear him apart, and he's probably going to drop out quickly. But if he does do well in the debates, which I have a feeling he might, I think he could make a really good name for himself. At the very least, he's one of the lowest of the middle 8 right now. I think he's just barely at 2%. But if he does well in the first debates, he could go up really quickly if he does very well. So again, progressive messages tend to do pretty well, and when I do hear Andrew Yang talk about progressive issues, he's pretty strong on what he believes in, so I think he has a good shot. But again, will he get the nomination? I'm not sure, but I think anyone in the middle 8 has a decent chance. I would at least vote for anyone in the middle 8 over Donald Trump. It's just anyone from the bottom half I'm kind of split on, but yeah. Now I'm going to go through quickly the rest of the debate night 2, the last 4 very quickly. So Michael Bennet, more conservative Democrat. From a little I've seen of the guy, he kind of bashes socialism and democratic socialism a lot, and a lot of issues that young people, particularly progressives, care about. So yeah, I don't think he's going to last very long. John Hickenlooper, the breakfast cereal. Again, another shout out to Secular Talk, Kyle Klinsky. Definitely not progressive. What little I've heard of the guy, don't like him. Not really much positive I can say about the guy. Even what little I know about him on issues, I don't think he's going to last very long in these debates. Eric Swalwell, Democratic congressman from California. I've seen him on Rachel Maddow a few times. He's an okay guy, but I honestly think, even if there were only half as many Democrats running right now, and he was one of them, I don't think he'd have a good shot either way. If he does okay in the first debate, he might be around for a while, but again, I like a few others. I'd be amazed if he's still around until Christmas. And then finally, Marianne Williamson. She's not a politician. She's an author of very self-help novels, but she has talked a bit about progressive issues, and I have seen her on the Young Turks once, so from what little we know about her, she is somewhat progressive, but the fact that she's really one of only a couple people who's not a politician right now, that could be seen as something to use against her, but because I don't really know much about her in terms of a debater, I will be interested to at least hear what she has to say on debate night 2, but if she doesn't do well in the first debate, I have a feeling she's going to drop quickly. So, yeah, that's everyone debate night 2, and yeah, that's brings the video to an end. Okay, and that's my initial thoughts on all 20 Democrats running for president in 2020 who will be on the first debate, 2 debate nights. Like I said, the other 4 Democrats, Steve Bullock, Mike Gravel, Wayne Messam, and Seth Moulton, not really going to talk about them, but at least acknowledge they exist in this video, so but yeah, so that's my initial thoughts, as well as giving some personal backstory on me and my political views, and I'm looking forward for the first debates. Yeah, thank you for listening. I have another, like I said, I'm going to do a part 2 where I give my thoughts after watching the 2 debate nights. I'll probably film it this weekend. It'll be up sometime early next week. And I'll have another art video sometime in the next week or so. A couple of weeks I plan on doing a Doctor Who video. And I have another Power Rangers video in mind, but I don't know when I'm going to get to that. And I have one other video project I want to start doing if I get a chance to get to it. Hopefully I can start it in July. So just a quick update on some things. I've been kind of busy the last few weeks. That's why I haven't had that many videos. Basically at the end of May and the first half of June. Like, I was lucky to get 1 video a week, but I'm still keeping the promise. Year's almost half over, and I'm still trying to keep the promise. New Year's resolution of uploading at least 1 video a week. So, and like I said, I have a few more political talk videos planned in the near future. As I said near the beginning, a note to myself, do a video about the Electoral College sometime later, probably by the end of the summer. And yeah, if you like this video, like, share, and subscribe. And if you feel like commenting, please do so, and hopefully I'll get back to you. Thank you guys very much, and I'll see you again in a week when I give my follow-up video after watching the debates. So have a good evening. Take care.